Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes sound design is about the stuff that we don't hear. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in light and in a conversational fashion. You know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because honestly, you're listening. So please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So please give us a like and subscribe there as well. We'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads. There's probably a few other places at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please come by and pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the movie image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. It's time for some more Emmy talk, and I guess this counts as a TV movie since we're looking into The Gorge with Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, which is on Apple TV Plus. Now, specifically, we are talking with the sound editing team of the film, Ethan Van der Ryan, Erik Aadahl, and Paul Hackner, all who have been nominated for an Emmy Award for their work on The Gorge. We talk a little bit about sort of the nature of the job, and also, you know, how sound design includes, you know, sort of those sounds that you don't hear. I mean, this kind of reminds me of jazz. To me, sound design in movies is the equivalent of jazz, and we talk a little bit about that too. But we had a fun talk with those guys, and obviously go check out The Gorge on Apple TV Plus now. But first, enjoy our talk with Ethan, Erik, and Paul. To congratulate them on the Emmy nomination, because I mean that's an achievement in and of itself. So good for them. But it's a good talk, so have fun with it. Thank you for the time, and just congrats to your entire team on the nomination for The Gorge.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Now, I mean, this might be a silly question. I'm not entirely sure where to lean this, but because, I mean, editing, okay, I can understand. That's kind of self-evident. But when it comes to the idea of sound design, especially in a movie like this, it almost feels like you're having to sort of consciously know how you're going to shape how things are going to sound. Is that a best way to describe it? Because I mean, really, just I guess maybe just for people out there, like, can you walk us through sort of the particulars of what designing sound for something like this means?
Yeah. I think of sound design as almost like a little magic trick.
Right.
You know, and it's an illusion, an auditory illusion. And I think one of my favorite filmmakers, Walter Murch, put it really well when he described how images come in kind of through the front door, but sound comes in through the back door. And it can work very sort of subconsciously and powerfully on human emotions and trigger the reptilian part of the brain where we can feel sort of suspense and fear and tension. And so for sound design on a movie like The Gorge, that's kind of how we approach it. What are the feelings we want to evoke? And then how do we create sounds that maybe are something nobody's ever heard before and isn't recognizable that triggers those emotions?
Mm.
And that's kind of one of I sort of think of sound design as an abstract art, because you can take something that's totally different from what you're seeing on the image, but create an alchemy with the image that works on a powerful emotional level.
No, I'm curious on something like this, especially given sort of the dual nature of it. Like on one end, they're, you know, screaming across each other this big expanse, but then they're in there, and then things get a little different. Like, do you guys get time on set, or do you have to do you just sort of invent stuff on the fly? Like, I mean, do you have to know that, okay, maybe in the shot they're 6 feet away from each other, so it'll sound like this, versus when they're in the pit, it's like this? Like, I'm kind of curious on, I guess, maybe the math of it all, if that makes any kind of
Yeah.
sense.
Well, the evolution of the sound on this project started while they were shooting, we were experimenting with sound design. And, through the editing process of the picture and the storytelling, the sound evolved as well. And I mean, a big conversation from the beginning was like, how do we make it sort of feel like it's in this real world space? So we like Erik suggested, there's a lot of sort of instinctual creative techniques that we create new and fresh sounds, but also we thought a lot about how space works. And this is a vast gorge, and how the sound of the music is going to sound across the gorge, how long a gunshot sounds away from your ear. Because I mean, in our minds, a lightning strike or a
Course,
gunshot
yeah.
happens perfectly, but we're trying to evoke that sense of space and how, because it's a love story too. So we're trying to sort of show how far they are and then get excited to how close they get. So, I mean, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, because it's always fascinated me just in terms the marriage of what you guys do versus the dialogue versus the music, and just how it has to sort of really sync up together. And I mean, I guess it begs my next question. I can imagine, like, I'm assuming like a good 90 to 95% of your job, you have to think about sort of after everything's in the can. It's not a question of you guys like are on set going, well, what about this? What about that? It's all discovering sort of things sort of after the fact. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, for us, especially Paul was on well before us, as he said, through the shooting. We came on, Erik and I came on later. So for us, it was really wrapping our heads around it after it had all been shot, and there was a cut together. And that's when we just, sit down in our studios and watch the cut and sort of react, really, for us, on an instinctual level to what we're seeing and how the story is evolving and what we're feeling we need to do in terms of the sound design in any given moment to really help tell the story. So I think it, I think at that point for us, it's like instinctual, but also trying to use the logic, as Paul was just sort of talking about, in terms of portraying the scale, and but really at its heart, it's about how we can help tell this story, which in the Gorge is really so many different things,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
at its heart it's a love story, but it's also a monster movie.
totally.
So there's a lot of sort of facets to it that sort of have to be woven together to help, pull off the magic trick that Erik was talking about.
Well, and I love that idea of the magic trick, because it really feels like, especially with this project, it's one of those things where you kind of have to listen with your ears. You have to watch it with your ears.
Yeah.
And just sort of be able to experience it auditorially. And I mean, I'm curious because, again, it's one of those things where, how do you sort of get into the creative mindset to sort of be like, okay, I need a sound here versus I don't need one there? Because I can imagine sort of the use of negative space is just as important as the use of putting something in.
That's a brilliant deduction. I mean, it's interesting because I think so few people actually get that, especially, people who aren't actually in the field like we are. So I'm super pleased to hear you ask that question, because I think for us, negative space is actually probably the single most important part of what we do, and being aware of, like, always being aware, of trying to create negative space. And the thing about what we do is the time scale that we operate on is, there's 24 frames of film in a second. So the basic, time scale we go down to is a 24th of a second, really. So, and it pays off. What you learn quickly is that, like, creating space really pays big dividends, even at like a microscopic scale, in terms of creating precision and articulation and dynamics. And really it's about, moment to moment, what's the most important sound to sort of help create this moment, and then focusing on that, and trying to strip everything else away that may be obscuring that.
Now I'm curious. Obviously, Scott Derrickson, great director, knows how to make scary movies. I'm curious, when do you guys sort of initially sit down with him to sort of start figuring things out? Because I can imagine on one end, he'll obviously have notes and input, but at the same time, I'm curious how much kind of rope he gives you guys to sort of cook and sort of really sort of create something.
The best direction I've found is describing what the feeling they're trying to evoke is, rather than micromanaging or saying, hey, it should sound like this other movie or this or that. So the direction we got from Scott Derrickson was super helpful. Like the first, and we met him kind of the first week that we got on the show, and obviously Paul had been working with Scott prior to that. But the first thing he said was, okay, like the sound of the Hollow Men should be bone chilling. And so that was kind of like, okay, those two words, bone chilling, in our heads the whole time. And one of the neat things about how this story is structured is you hear the Hollow Men way before you ever see them. So we're sort of teasing the audience with like, what is this terror down this gorge? And so the first introduction of the Hollow Men, we really kind of tried to focus on, okay, what gives you goosebumps? What kind of is that bone chilling sound? And there was a lot of experimentation that kind of went into finding that. And he did tell us what he didn't want. He did not want them to sound like zombies. He did not want them to sound like monster beast animals.
Yeah.
They shouldn't sound human either, even though they started as humans that then mutated. So okay, where do you go from there? And
No, I'm curious, do you get sort of a visual reveal before you start creating these sounds, or or are you allowed to go in blind and to be able to just ultimately marry the two at some point?
yeah, well, go for it, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's better to go into it blind because, like, Eric was saying, it was like uh, these these words that Scott's a writer. He's not only a director, he's a writer, and these words that he gave us would help evoke this sort of instinctual sound design that, ultimately Eric and Ethan just like nailed. And it was early on, I got visual references, but they can be a misdirect, because it's really, we're serving the story, and and ultimately one of the genres in this multi-genre project is sort of monster slash, horror, which is really about, evoking these sort of, evolutionary feelings that we have of fight or flight. And so, go, I mean, in a way, it's better for us to get less visual information at first. But on the other hand, since these creatures are hybrid and they're made up of wood and fungus and human and insect, some of those visual references were obviously essential too.
No, I mean, I'm going to ask you all this, but I mean, we'll start with Ethan because, again, I'm always curious how people get into this business. And I mean, again, it's not sort of the John Williams sort of crafting this big score and doing something that's going to fill sort of the frame from end to end. It's about sort of those beats in between. It's about understanding where we need to be, where we don't need to be, like we were talking about. What is it about sort of sound design and sound editing that ultimately is the creative payoff for you guys, especially in a business like this?
Hmm. Well, yeah, great question. For me, getting into it, I just I started in college studying sciences, and then at the end of my first year, I had a big car accident, which created like this, I was lucky to survive it. And after that, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I was studying sciences and I realized this is not my passion. Like, I want to go, make movies. So I ended up going to film school. And then when I got out of film school, I was in the Bay Area. And there's a little sound sort of post sound community in the Bay Area. And that's where I was able to get work. I didn't have any, that wasn't like something I felt like I was really good at. And I didn't really know how to do it. So I came on as an apprentice and just started learning from the ground up. And fortunately, in those days, computers and digital technology wasn't really in use. Everything was analog, which was good for me because I've never been much of a computer person. I've always been like more interested in like poetry than technology. So I've always come at what we do in sound design from a sort of from that perspective of like poetry and rhythm and timbre and really just feeling, as opposed to like what can we do with this technology. So it's been a great sort of playground for me to really explore those kind of interests I had from a very young age of like of sort of poetic, bringing together imagery and sound in a poetic way that can move people at a deep level. For me, that's what it's really always been about. And as I've continued through my career, it's become even more kind of focused on that.
Eric, how about you?
It's funny. I kind of had a similar path to Ethan where I started in the sciences and I was a biology major doing pre-med. And the first week at college, I couldn't sleep. And I felt nauseous and I wasn't eating. And I kind of had this similar epiphany where maybe I've like opened the wrong door and I'm going down the wrong path with my life. And I'd also applied to USC Film School, and I called them back and said, "Hey, do I still have my scholarship? Can I still come? I know the semester started." They're like, "Sure, come on down." Instantly, I slept like a baby. I was happy again. The nausea was all gone. It was a total gut level kind of thing. My body was telling me, "No, you want to go into film and don't close that door." And so I did wind up, from parental pressure, double majoring for a few years and until that course load got too much, and then fully committed to film. But ever since the very first movie I ever saw in a cinema was E.T., and I was just a little 4-year-old, and I remember it vividly. I remember just being overwhelmed with emotion and crying in the theater. And it just hit me so hard, just the power and magic of filmmaking. And so from like a young age, starting around age 8, I just started making my own films, and I converted my parents' dining room into a picture editing and sound mixing suite with a little 8-channel mixer, and I'd make movies with my friends, and some of them feature length. And it was something I did for fun, and it never clicked in my head that, oh, you can actually do this for a living, like until kind of that one pivotal moment where I chose to go to film school.
Love it.
So, yeah, so for me, it's it's such a fun, creative job. It isn't without its challenges, but you wake up in the morning excited, like, okay, what are we going to conjure today? And one of the fun things about sound design is you're not just stuck in a dark room like this all day. you can go out doing expeditions, recording and collecting sounds and meeting animals and recording them and collecting fresh ingredients from all around the world. I mean, it's because of this job I've been able to travel to Cambodia and record frogs in the rainforest. And, it's, there's always something fresh and new to experience. So I'm grateful to have fallen into this line of art.
Paul, how about you?
Well, my first experience sound editing was probably making mixtapes. I've just been obsessed with music and
Right.
sound my whole life. And I just, when I was making the mixtapes, I would be experimenting with the levels and trying to tell some sort of story. And when I was in college, I worked at the radio station. I'm like, yeah, I love music. I want to do something with music. And I ended up going to South by Southwest when it was still just a music festival,
Right.
and went there and they were experimenting with the idea of film, and they had some panels, and I got to see Richard Linklater speak. And it was just this moment in time. I had gone to see Slacker when it was in limited release. Then I went to see it, I dragged all my friends to see it in the when it got the theatrical release. And then I saw him speak, and this light went off in my head. I'm like, independent film, sound, music, everything. It's just I just had this explosion of excitement because going to a music festival and seeing all these industry types, strut around, it was like, I don't want to be around this. I mean, I ended up around a little bit of it because the movie industry is a bit like that too. But, I really just got excited to get into the process of being on a crew and working with people. And I did production sound and like had that experience of going on set. And it just changed my life to be part of movie making. People were dedicated to doing something at a high level and excited to support each other.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, guys, if this is a bad analogy, please forgive me, but just in hearing the way you guys passionately describe this, it feels like you're in the jazz end of the movie business. Like you get to sprinkle a little bit of stardust, so sort of add that little layer on top to what everyone else is doing, and you're not necessarily playing to the masses. You're playing to that one guy in the back who's just smiling, going, "Cool." I like that, and I mean, I love, and I mean, to me, that is absolutely so cool. And I mean, I'm so just to hear you guys talk about this passionately makes me excited for you guys. And just again, congrats on the nod and congrats on the work, and just thank you all for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Yeah, it's
Very
been
welcome.
Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.